I always believed I had control over many aspects of my life: loneliness, heartbreak, even desires. But that day, I realized everything had slipped beyond my grasp. I must admit, this story marks the beginning of the most complicated and forbidden moments of my life. As I recount what happened, my breath quickens and my heart races, because this isn't just a confession. It's the story of how a woman can lose herself in loneliness, passion, and tangled emotions. I am 50 years old, and people are often surprised when they hear my age. It has been 10 years since I divorced Andrew. We separated because he was unfaithful, and to this day, I still don't understand why. I've always been a well-groomed, elegant woman who enjoys the attention of others. But despite the admiration, the last decade of solitude has left a deep void in me. No matter how strong I appear, when I lie in bed at night, the emptiness is impossible to ignore. That morning, I was preparing to meet my friend Olivia for coffee. Like me, Olivia is also divorced, an elegant woman trying to navigate life after separation. I chose a fitted skirt that showed off my toned legs and paired it with a soft pastel blouse. As I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I smiled faintly. "I'm still attractive," I murmured. It was a truth I needed to remind myself of. When I met Olivia at the cafe, our conversation, as always, revolved around old memories and the gaps in our lives. We talked about the silence in our homes and the disappointments in relationships. As Olivia spoke animatedly, my gaze drifted outside for a moment. A familiar face caught my eye. It was my nephew, Ethan. Ethan is 26, full of life and a cheerful young man. Although we don't see each other often, he has always been respectful and affectionate towards me. But that day, Ethan wasn't alone. Standing next to him was someone who instantly captured my attention. Tall, broad-shouldered, and with an undeniable presence, this man was impossible to ignore. Later, I would learn his name, Lucas. At 29, Ethan's friend Lucas wasn't just striking in appearance. He had an aura that lingered, even after he was gone. When Lucas's eyes briefly met mine, I felt my heart quicken. It was a feeling I couldn't admit to myself, but something inside me had stirred. When Ethan came over to say hello, there was a brief exchange of greetings. "Ava, if you ever need anything, just let me know," he said with his usual easygoing charm. His words made me smile faintly, but I couldn't ignore the way Lucas looked at me. Those weren't just polite glances. There was something more in them. Still, I chose not to dwell on it in the moment. When I returned home, I found a large box sitting at my doorstep. It was the entertainment system I had ordered online the previous week. But as I took in its size, I realized there was no way I could set it up alone. At first, I felt a pang of disappointment. Then I remembered Ethan's words, "Let me know." Reaching for my phone, I dialed his number. When he answered, I found out that Lucas was with him. "We'll come together," Ethan said. A strange wave of excitement surged inside me. If I said I didn't want to see Lucas again, I'd be lying to myself. When the doorbell rang, my heart was already racing. Ethan entered with his usual relaxed demeanor. But Lucas? The moment he stepped through the door, his eyes locked onto mine. His presence shifted the atmosphere in the room, filling it with a quiet tension and an inexplicable pull. Those eyes, those deep hazel eyes, captured me and wouldn't let go. At that moment, I had no idea how an ordinary day was about to spiral out of my control. But now I know everything began with those eyes. Before this story gets even crazier, don't forget to follow for more updates. Your support through comments and likes means so much. As Ethan and Lucas started setting up the TV, I stood back and watched them. Ethan, as always, was energetic and easygoing, handling the setup with his usual carefree attitude. Lucas, on the other hand, was quiet and focused, working with precision. But every time our eyes met, I felt something resonate in that silence, an unexplainable tension, maybe even a pull I was trying hard to ignore. I was still wearing the outfit I had chosen for coffee earlier, a fitted skirt that left my legs exposed and a light flowing blouse. I've always enjoyed looking my best, but that day, as I noticed Lucas's gaze lingering on me, I became even more aware of my outfit. Perhaps that awareness sparked an excitement I was trying to suppress. At one point during the setup, Lucas reached out to hand me a cable, and our hands accidentally brushed. We both instinctively pulled back, but for a moment, it felt like a spark had ignited in the air. Lucas smiled faintly. "Sorry, that wasn't intentional," he said. His voice was calm and polite, but the slight curve of his lips stirred something inside me. As the setup slowly progressed, I couldn't help but thank them warmly. "Thank you so much, both of you. Living alone, it's hard to handle things like this." Lucas gave a small smile, his calm and charismatic demeanor giving weight to every word. "Don't hesitate to call us for things like this," he said, his tone sincere yet carrying something deeper. Turning to Ethan, I added, "Once it's all set up, I'm inviting you both to the first movie night. You have to come." Ethan immediately grinned. "That sounds great. Movie nights are always fun." Lucas, however, simply nodded with a small smile, but the warmth in his eyes was entirely focused on me. "I'll make you both some coffee so you can take a break," I said, heading to the kitchen. As I started the coffee machine, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. Turning around, I saw Lucas standing at the doorway. His arms were loosely crossed in front of him, and though he hadn't fully stepped into the room, his presence filled the entire kitchen. His gaze lingered for a moment on the hem of my skirt, the soft fabric of my blouse skimming my shoulders, before quickly meeting my eyes again. The weight of his glance was impossible to ignore. "I just wanted to thank you," he said, his voice calm but carrying a hint of warmth. In that moment, I couldn't help but notice how striking he was, his broad shoulders, muscular arms, and the quiet confidence in his expression. His mere presence stirred something inside me. Smiling slightly, I said, "No need to thank me. If anything, I've made more work for you by choosing such a massive TV." Lucas chuckled softly and leaned against the table, his large hands gripping the edge as though asserting his presence over the space. "You seem happy with your choice," he said, his eyes briefly flicking down my body before returning to my face. As I adjusted my hair, I replied, "Yes. When you live alone, small pleasures like this become more important." I could feel him watching me intently, his gaze moving over me like a silent compliment. It was both unsettling and oddly thrilling. Lucas's voice dropped slightly, becoming almost intimate. Loneliness isn't always a bad thing, but sometimes when you have someone to share it with, everything feels more meaningful. The way he said it made me realize he wasn't just sharing a thought. He was hinting at something much deeper. My eyes involuntarily drifted to his broad frame and slightly muscular arms. He was so self-assured and captivating that for a few seconds I didn't even know what to say. Gripping the coffee mugs tightly, I tried to collect myself. "I suppose you're right," I said, but the slight tremor in my voice betrayed me. Lucas straightened up from the table and took a step closer. Now he was so near I could feel the warmth of his breath. Looking straight into my eyes, he said, "If you ever want to test out this system, invite Ethan and me over." His words sounded like a casual suggestion, but the tone of his voice and the look in his eyes told a much deeper story. Just then, Ethan's voice called from the living room. "Lucas, can you pass me the cable?" Lucas hesitated for a few seconds before giving a slight nod. "I'll be right there," he said. But during those seconds, the intense energy lingering between us filled the air in the kitchen. As he walked out, his commanding presence lingered behind, leaving me to grapple with the undeniable connection that moment had revealed. We drank our coffees together, chatting for a few minutes. Lucas and Ethan eventually finished setting up the system, and I thanked them both sincerely. Ethan, ever the playful one, joked, "Enjoy it, Ava," while Lucas, with a polite smile, added, "If you need anything else, let us know." When our eyes met one last time before they left, the energy between us remained palpable, fresh, and unshakable. After they left, a silence settled over the house. The new TV and sound system stood proudly in front of me, but my mind was still caught on Lucas. His calm yet charismatic demeanor, his gentle touches, and his powerful presence continued to pull me toward him. Later, as I cleaned up the coffee cups in the kitchen, something on the table caught my eye. A small flower accompanied by a folded piece of paper. My heart raced as I picked it up and opened the note, revealing Lucas's neat handwriting. "If you ever need anything, you can call me, Lucas." His phone number was written just below. This small but meaningful gesture set my heart racing. This man truly knew how to surprise me. That evening, I found myself sitting in front of the new TV, my phone in hand, staring at Lucas's number. Should I text him or just ignore it? The emotions inside me were spinning, threatening to override my logic. I couldn't resist any longer. My fingers moved over the screen and I sent a short message. "Lucas, thank you for the flower you left today. That was very thoughtful of you. If you're free, would you like to join me for coffee or wine while we test out the system?" The moment I hit send, my heart pounded so hard it felt like it might leap out of my chest. It didn't take long for a response to arrive. My phone buzzed and his reply lit up the screen. "That's a wonderful idea, Ava. I'm bringing a bottle of wine over." When Lucas appeared at my door with a bottle of red wine in hand, his confidence once again left me speechless. The way he paid attention to the little details, his thoughtful nature, it all made him stand out. "A good wine is essential for a proper system test," he said with a faint smile. Lucas raised his glass slightly and added, "Only for special people." The depth in his eyes took my breath away. This man wasn't just kind. Somehow, with every move he made, he filled a part of the emptiness inside me. We turned on the television and began testing the music system. but the energy between us was so intense that neither of us was really paying attention to the music or the screen. Our conversations grew deeper, and as Lucas leaned slightly closer to me, the space between us seemed to shrink. Our body language, the eye contact, everything was becoming more and more charged. "Ava," Lucas said, his voice soft yet resolute, "I didn't come here tonight just to try the wine. I want to get to know you better." Those words brought all my feelings rushing to the surface. I couldn't tear my eyes away from his. That moment made it clear the connection between us was shifting into something entirely different. What we chose to do with this growing tension was now completely up to us. As I felt the intensity of Lucas's gaze, something inside me stirred. I slowly set my wine glass down on the coffee table and stood up. My hand reached for the straps of my dress, and I could hear his breath quicken. I took a step toward him and smiled softly. "If you really want to get to know someone," I said, my voice trembling slightly, almost like a whisper, "getting closer is essential." As the straps of my dress slipped from my shoulders and cascaded to the floor, I could see the admiration in Lucas's eyes, a mix of awe and deep attraction. In that instant, everything else in the room faded into silence. Time itself seemed to stop, leaving only the two of us. Lucas's gaze roamed over me, his desire raw and unmistakable. He moved closer, his steps deliberate and steady, closing the gap between us. He was so near that I could feel the warmth of his breath against my skin. "Ava," he murmured, his voice low and deep, "the fact that a woman like you is this strong and bold, it makes you even more mesmerizing." My heart was racing, but my expression remained calm. Tilting my head slightly, I locked eyes with him. "Lucas," I said, my voice steady, my gaze never wavering. "Being here tonight wasn't just about tasting wine. It was a choice. And I chose to get to know you better." Those words dissolved the tension completely. Lucas placed his hands on my waist, his strong and confident movements pulling me closer to him. His eyes were like an ocean I could drown in. He leaned down slowly and his lips met mine. That kiss, it was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Intense, real, and overwhelming. As Lucas's hands began to explore my body slowly, I felt an irresistible urge to let go of everything and surrender entirely to the moment. My hands reached for his strong shoulders, feeling his warmth pull me even deeper into the present. Nothing, no thought, no regret could overshadow the significance of this moment. This wasn't just physical closeness, it was the release of years of loneliness and longing. Now there was only this moment, only Lucas and me. Lucas paused for a brief moment, looking deep into my eyes before turning toward the music system in the living room. Within seconds, a soft romantic melody filled the air. The gentle rhythm of the music fueled my excitement even more as I let myself sink into the couch. In those moments, I felt something huge stirring inside me. The sound of the music started to blend with the sounds I was making. Everything was happening so fast. My nails had already scratched Lucas's back multiple times. It had been so long since I had experienced anything like this, and my body, my legs, responded with an intense reaction. I couldn't open my eyes, and my hands were gripping the couch tightly. For a brief second, I opened my eyes and glanced at the TV, trying to think the best purchase I've ever made in my life, but I was so out of breath that no sound came out. Lucas kept whispering how beautiful and incredibly captivating I was, kissing me non-stop. It was overwhelming. No one in my life had ever been this affected by me, and that kept fueling my excitement. I looked at Lucas, wanting to find the words to tell him how incredible he looked. His slightly damp hair, his broad, muscular body coming together so perfectly. These moments ended with both of our bodies tensing at the same time. While I was thinking about how compatible we were in every way, Lucas had already lain down beside me. The peace and exhaustion from those moments had pulled me into a deep sleep, one I hadn't experienced in a long time. But as the first light of morning crept in and I opened my eyes, I realized the spot next to me was empty. I was alone on the couch. The thought of Lucas not being there made me feel uneasy. I quickly sat up, looking around for him. My eyes landed on the coffee table right next to my clothes scattered on the floor. There, a single flower and a folded note rested. My heart pounded as I reached for it, unfolding the paper with slightly trembling fingers. I want to take you somewhere very special very soon. Last night was amazing, but it was only the beginning compared to what we're going to experience together. I can't wait for what's next. As I read the note, a warmth spread through me, mixed with curiosity. I picked up the flower and smiled. Lucas kept surprising me time and time again. At that moment, I knew this story was just beginning, and that a journey filled with emotions I had never experienced before was waiting for me. Yes, it had been that kind of night, but it wouldn't end there. When I tell you what happened next, you're going to feel an incredible rush and completely lose yourself in the emotions. Stay tuned for the rest of this story. If you've made it this far, I know my story has deeply affected you. There's so much more to share, and you won't want to miss any of it. Don't forget to hit the follow button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment about what you think of this story. All my life, people have noticed my beauty, but I never tried to use it to my advantage. When I was younger, I dreamed of becoming an artist, but that dream ended when Daniel came into my life. "We don't need the money, so I don't want you to do it," he said. Back then, his decision became my decision. Now at 40, I live in the house of the man who changed the course of my life, sharing it with his son from his first marriage, Elijah, 24.4. He just graduated from university where he studied photography and visual arts, and he's back home now. His space is upstairs in the loft, a creative sanctuary where he spends hours drawing portraits of people, capturing their essence on canvas. At first, I thought his work was simply a reflection of his passion, but everything changed the day I accidentally left his door slightly open. How could I have known that an innocent portrait sketch would lead to all this? I'm going to tell you how that one night with Elijah turned into something far beyond just helping him. I know you'll judge me for this, but I can't keep it a secret anymore. That morning, Daniel had already left the house. I went upstairs and Elijah's door was slightly ajar. I wasn't planning to go in, but as I walked past, my eyes caught a glimpse of the canvas inside. What I saw stopped me dead in my tracks. It was my portrait, but what shook me even more was the large photo pinned to the wall beside it. It was an old picture I had posted on social media years ago. Every line of my face, the depth in my eyes, even the emotions I was feeling at that moment were captured in his painting. I hadn't realized Elijah had studied me so closely. Seeing that he had downloaded my photo and printed it to create this portrait, it should have scared me, right? But it didn't. I still looked. For a moment, I stood frozen in the doorway, my heart racing. A wave of excitement and something else, something I couldn't quite name, washed over me. The version of me in that painting was different, stronger, more captivating. Elijah had drawn me as more than I thought I was. My hands trembled as I touched the edge of the door frame. I couldn't stay there any longer. Quietly, I turned and made my way back down the stairs. My footsteps led me to the kitchen, but my heart was still racing. The image of that painting stayed in my mind. I thought it was just going to be another piece of art, but I was wrong. I couldn't have imagined that moment would become something real. Ever since Elijah returned home, there's been this energy between us, something I can't quite explain. At first, everything felt normal, even warm, but over time, I noticed Elijah withdrawing. He started spending more and more time upstairs, locked away in his room, working for hours. His door was usually closed, but the other day it was accidentally left open, just for a moment. That moment burned into my mind. He had drawn me. He had downloaded one of my photos from social media and brought it to life on his canvas. Every brush stroke felt like it revealed a part of me, like he wasn't just painting my face, but my soul. When I saw that painting, something inside me stirred, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything to Elijah about it. The next day, loud voices from upstairs caught my attention. I hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, my heart pounding. What was happening up there? And why did I feel like my entire world was about to change forever? A girl was yelling, her voice sharp and angry. Before I could make sense of it, the door to Elijah's room flew open and the girl stormed out. Her face was red with fury, tears streaming down her cheeks as she hurried past me in the hallway. My heart raced. Should I go upstairs? I hesitated, torn between staying out of it and finding out what had happened. In the end, I couldn't stop myself. I found myself at Elijah's door. I knocked softly. "Elijah?" I said, my voice hesitant. I heard a sigh from inside. "Come in," he said, his voice tired and vulnerable. I pushed the door open slightly and stepped in. He was standing in the middle of the room, staring at a canvas. The painting wasn't finished. The colors and details were flawless, but the whole thing still looked incomplete. "What's going on?" I asked, unable to hide the concern in my voice. Elijah lowered his head, then slowly turned to face me. There was a kind of helplessness in his eyes. "That portrait," he said, his voice carrying a hint of defeat. "I had a deal for it, a big project. The client wanted a portrait of a graceful, strong, beautiful woman. They offered a lot of money, but it's not just about the money, Ava. This is my reputation. This project could open doors for my career. But when I was working on that girl's portrait, I realized it wasn't going to work. He wouldn't have liked it. I would have let him down. His voice shook.